Well, I would like to welcome everybody to the next segment of the Purdue conference. My name is Eric Ham. I work for FMC uh, Global Specialty Solutions. I'm a key account manager. I'm going to talk a little bit today about PMP equipment, or as I like to term it, how would I like to outfit a truck? One of the important things to know is that, when we put service vehicles together, you've got to outfit them for the job that they are doing out in the field. So what I'm doing with this presentation, I'm going to give you a little idea of what's out there and available these days as far as equipment and how to outfit a truck. I do want to do a couple of little things right now and say thank you to the committee, to the conference committee for the invitation to speak. It's always an honor and a pleasure to do that. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you, just in case I forget a little later. So onward, forward we go. Once again, I work at FMC. We're the folks that we make Talstar. We are we also make Scion Transport, the CB aerosol line, and our granules. I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you at this point to all of you customers out there. Your support is what makes this available, or this means of training available. So thank you for your support with our products. One of the things that we do at FMC that we take seriously is safety. And what we do is called a safety share. So whenever we get on a call, or whenever we get on a Teams meeting, or something of that nature, or a Zoom meeting for that matter, one of the first things we do, or the first thing we do, is called a safety share. Well, what you try to do is take a topic that's safety minded to keep safety top of mind. I've worked here at FMC almost 13 years, and to be very honest with you, when I started, I didn't think a lot about safety, but working here at FMC has brought safety to my top of mind especially when I'm out in the field. Safety is a culture that has to be developed within your company. And that's something that you need to focus on as you go through and get into your company. You want everyone to get home at night. So with that, once again, we're going to do a little safety share here. And what I thought we'd do the safety share was, I never thought I would spend as much time as I have the last three plus years on the computer. So what I have gotten into is eye strain, digital eye strain. So there are some tips that I want to throw out to you to help ease that digital eye strain. Sit about 24 inches, 25 inches away from your computer screen. Follow the 20-20-20 rule, which if you don't know what that is, we'll talk about it here in just a second. Make sure that you adjust the lighting, room lighting, increase the contrast on your computer. All of these things will help. And then, as I found out, my eyes dry out very quickly when I'm sitting in front of a computer screen. So you may need to use artificial tears to help, refresh your eyes when they feel dry and things like that. So what is that 20-20-20 rule? Well, that 20-20-20 rule is an easy way to help mitigate the effects of digital eye strain. Essentially, after 20 minutes of using an electronic device, you should look at something at least 20 feet away for a minimum of 20 seconds, hence 20-20-20. It takes about 20 seconds for your eyes to relax. Then once those 20 seconds are up, you can go back to the screen. And what that does is that will help alleviate some of that digital eye strain. You may also want to take a few sips of water, help make sure the body's hydrated and things of that nature. But if you'll remember these tips, or this particular tip, for that matter, I think you'll find that digital eye strain is a lot less. I'll never forget during 2020, during COVID, some of those first few months afterwards where I'd sit in front of a computer screen all day. When I tried to go to bed at night, I just literally cried. And, this is something that will help you mitigate those effects. So remember the 20-20-20 rule to reduce the effects of digital eye strain. Take that break after 20 seconds, look 20 feet away every 20 minutes. So hopefully that will help you. But I'm going to end with this. Please, please, please make sure that you're safe out in the field. Everybody needs to get home safe. And to do that, we need to exhibit and encourage safety whenever we're in the field. So hope that helps you and hope that keeps you safe out there. Take care on that. All right. Next, we're going to talk about equipment. We're going to talk about how I would set up a PMP truck or vehicle. Some of the things we're going to cover today is the vehicle itself. We'll talk about that in just a second. PMP safety equipment. We know the label is the law in our particular business. And with that, on that label are particular safety equipment requirements that we need to make sure are on a truck. So we'll talk about some of that. To do that, once again, you've got to know your products and your labels that are going to be on that truck. I've broken this down where we're going to talk about termite equipment trucks, what kind of PMP termite equipment is needed on a truck, and then what kind of general pest equipment is needed on a truck. This is broad, everybody. I wish I could shrink it down for you, but we're going to, hopefully I can give you some things to think about or that you should be thinking about as you come up. One of the biggest things I'm going to talk about, though, or one of the things I want to leave you with here is you've got to get good feedback from your technicians about what products or equipment, especially equipment, that they need on a truck. There needs to be a good rapport. This isn't, just about what you think. They're out in the field. They're using this vehicle to run their routes and things like that. So their feedback is important in this. So keep that in mind when you put this together. First thing we'll talk about, what vehicles to use. Small pickup, medium, these days we've got the new small pickups coming into the marketplace. We've got the medium-sized pickups. We've got the big pickups. We've got utility beds. We've got vans. We've got small vans. You name it, we've got this availability out there. I've even got some folks that still use what I call cars, or what we'll call cars. Now, with some of the restrictions and things that we've gone through due to COVID and supply chain issues, it's become a chore just to find vehicles in a lot of cases. So, you've got to plan out basically sometimes months in advance how you want to go about setting up a vehicle, or what's the chore for the vehicle. But there are a number of options how you want to do it. So you've got to start with this. Also within this, these days electric vehicles are getting a lot of talk in the marketplace. And there can be, in my opinion, there can be a place for these types of vehicles. If you're going to have electric vehicle or fleet, in your fleet, I think you're going to have to do a really good job of routing with them, because they just don't have the ability to go hundreds and hundreds of miles, couple of 300 miles in a day, so routing and how you route to make that where we don't have issues with charge and things like that, that's all going to come into this. And not to mention the federal government, some of the subsidies or tax credits, things like this. But once again, I'll go back to, you're going to have to make some decisions on this. And, that's kind of, I put this, what vehicle to use, kind of at the top, because that's where we're going to start with it. Next thing we'll talk about is, do we buy or do we lease? Well, this boils down to what's more, what's a better, what's a better area to be in for your company? Okay. Buy it or lease it. I will tell you these days that if you do lease it, a vehicle, you can have those vehicles fully equipped, so to speak, other than, the odds and ends that go on. So in this particular photo set, you can get the cap top, you can get the sprayers, you can get how you want to put the put the cap together as far as storage and things like that. You can get all of those things done, okay, when the vehicle arrives, before the vehicle arrives, where it's ready to roll when it gets there. But you have to talk to your financial folks and see what is the best position for this, whether it's buy or lease. So that's a good thing to know. And that's all part of this as far as vehicles are concerned. So keep that in mind. As you get ready to set up the next vehicle. Now, we've talked about vehicles. We've talked about how we might purchase vehicles or, for the company. So now let's talk about how, how do we want to put this vehicle together? Well, one of the first things, in my opinion, for a vehicle, we got to figure out uncovered or covered. Well, if we're carrying product, okay, we're going to want to cover it. We don't want to just leave that. We can't leave that product in an unlocked situation, so to speak. So, do we want to go flat cap? Do we want to go this new bottom right left hand there? That's a new adjustable. That lid actually moves down on, and you can lock it. We know about the bed caps that you can set up for it. Nowadays, you've got the pull-out beds available to you and things like that. So all of these are things that you need to start considering when you pick your vehicle. How are we going to set it up? Okay, if it's a pickup truck, we need to make sure that we lock. Gone are the days, or the old days, I'll say, of the old tool tainers, if there's anybody that remembers those. Now, you can get away with those in some situations, but if we're going to invest money, and some of this equipment, that's good money. I want to make sure that it's protected, and to do that, we need to make sure about how we're going to put this, make sure that things are locked up, things of that nature. So that's all very important. And some of the things that you do. Okay, as far as how we put together storage, now these are a couple of groups. The two items here, the one in the middle and the one on the left. www.truckvault.com. You can actually put these are pieces, okay, that are shelving units, I'll call them, for lack of a better term, that you can get the drawer system. You can get a if it's a truck, you can actually, one that gets in and sits in the bed, that's got a drawer system that comes out the back of the truck, off the back of the truck, and things like that. This is where I'll go back. This is where you need input from technicians on how you want to set this truck up, because we want to make sure that we've got proper storage areas for for our items that we're going to put on the truck. If there's also the weather guard, www.weatherguard.com. And I don't get anything back from these folks. These are just things that I found online when I started looking. But you'll notice there's a bin system that can be had from the WeatherGuard folks and things like that you can put in and incorporate into your truck beds and things of that nature, or your cap systems. And all of this is important because I think it's important that everything, or as many things as possible, has a place to go back to. And that's the important thing that you can do. So you can really get involved in this, or, hey, remember, if you lease it, you can get this set up where when it rolls up at the door, you're already ready. So, as far as that goes, what we're looking for is a clean truck, so to speak. All right. So you'll notice that this is the back of a truck, one of the service trucks of one of the companies I deal with, Cooks. And, They were gracious enough to let me take some photos and use these in this presentation. So notice how there's a lot of, you can see a lot of floor in this vehicle. And that's hugely important, okay? Hugely important. So, make it as clean and as easy. There's tie down systems on both sides of the bed. So you can tie sprayers down, whether it's backpack blowers or backpack sprayers, even hand sprayers. Everything has a place. It's clean. It's really very uncluttered. And that's important when you put that truck together, as far as that goes. So remember those things when you put your trucks together. Now, the next thing we'll talk about are rigs. Well, you've got what I call the old standby gas rigs, which is a gasoline motor, usually 3 horsepower. Most of the time nowadays, it's a 5 horsepower set up with a pump, okay, or the new electric pump system. And there are a lot of folks that are going to these electric pumps. And by the way, these electric pumps have really advanced over the last few years, and you can really, you can find what you need, so to speak, as far as what you need to do. Anytime you're dealing with a sprayer, okay, with what I call, a truck mounted sprayer, the thing you want to think about is volume. I want to move liquid through that hose. It's about moving liquid. It's not about pressure per se. It's about moving liquid, because the more higher the pressure, the less liquid you move. So these are considerations that you need to think about when go to decide. One of the big things that you need to do is, do we want to go for, if we go gas, then we've got to think these gas pumps, these roller pumps, piston pumps, diaphragm pumps, things of that nature. Or can we do the same type of thing with an electric pump system? And actually, for lack of a better word, I'll tell you that's a little cleaner as far as that goes. There's considerations about carrying gasoline on a truck and things like that if you're going to go with a gas rig. So, just real quick, as far as pumps go, you can do these 12-volt electric. As far as the advantages go, it's a smaller initial investment. It's lower maintenance, lower volumes in some cases. Although the newer pumps can actually move quite a bit of volume of liquid. We'll talk about some of that. And they're a much quieter operation, which that's really something we're going to be faced with, as we go on, is how much noise are we making at a customer's, at an account. Some of the disadvantages may be slower application rate, but some of these newer electric pumps, they'll put out 5, 6, 7 gallons per minute, which in most of our situations, that's going to be just fine for our application. So remember, smaller initial investment, lower maintenance. It's actually a little easier to work on from a maintenance point of view, and that quieter operation. As far as gas-powered pumps, they're higher volume, they're higher pressure. Well, the volume part I get. I see folks still using gas power for big pre-treat rigs, things like that. We'll talk about a little bit of that. But higher pressure, this is one where, I don't necessarily think we're trying to shoot flies off the wall of a barn at 50 paces or anything like that. That's what pressure is about. We want volume. And so volume is something we need to think about. Now, disadvantages of gas-powered unit, they're usually a higher initial investment because you've got a pump and you've got a gas motor. And so those two items, not to mention the base plate, the bypass valve, and a whole 9 yards that has to go along with that. So there is a higher initial investment. There is higher maintenance cost, okay, that goes along with this. These things don't last forever. You need to put some maintenance in them if, on a regular basis. And I'll stop here. If you currently have gas rigs in your fleet, okay, you need to make sure that they are being serviced in the early, in winter or in the early spring before you start to get busy, because you don't want to put one back out in the field and then it break down. That just costs you. So you need to work on them when you have the downtime, and the winter is normally that time. So I'll jump off there. There is noisier gas operation with gas powered units, and there's also, you've got to keep that gas can for, fill up on your truck, and that can be a little issue also. Okay, so that's the big thing with gas versus electric. All right, these days we can set these rigs up. Look at this. This is, each of these tanks is 30 gallons. All right. And those 30 gallons, as far as that goes, that's fitting into a footprint of about, probably 24 to 26, 28 inches wide in a truck. So that leaves you a lot of space, okay, to put other, to rack it correctly, to keep items on the truck, whatever it may be. But you're looking for utilizing space on a truck. So these days, there's a lot of options as far as that goes. If you're going to use a truck bed, these low profile tanks that don't come above the bed rails of a truck. And notice that pump that's on there, that's like a 5.6 gallon per minute electric pump. So once again, that's putting out quite a good volume as far as that goes. Now, if you want to get what I'll call exotic, well, we can do that. This is two 200-gallon tanks, a 100-gallon tank, and then a 25-gallon tank. So you can do IVM, industrial vegetation management. You can do turf and ornamental. You can do pest. You can download into a small tank to do spot stuff. You got a couple of rigs on this. So we can put together a truck as, as exotically as you would like, but understand and make sure you know what this truck is supposed to be, doing when it's out in the field. How do you want to utilize it? So you get a lot of options as far as use out of this type of rig. Now, these days, I'm a firm believer in low profile. That's a 50-gallon unit on the left. That's a 25-gallon unit on the right. I'll also take this moment and tell you that, so, and understand both of these, the one on the left is barely above the bed rails. The one on the right, it's under the bed rails. So you can, cap it, things like that. There's a lot of ways you can go about this, okay? Now, the one thing I do want to do is, if you'll see the highlight there, is that gap water fill. We want to make sure that we use something like that, because we don't want to suck water where we're filling tanks that may have product in it back into the water system. So if you're going to put a new tank together, you may want to have one of these fill gaps put on the unit when you put it together. Or if you don't, you want to make sure that you've got this backflow preventer. This is a garden hose backflow preventer. So if you're at someone's account and you use a hose bib to fill up your tank, you put this in line so that the material, if by some crazy reason, we put a hose in a tank and it fills to the point we don't want it flowing back into the water system. That's an inexpensive little item that needs to be on a truck. However you want to do it, but make sure that that's on a truck as far as that goes. Now, talking about some of the other things that are out there, whatever your service vehicle, however you want to do it, or whatever you want it to be, okay, a man's got to know his limitations. This is a 15-gallon rig in the trunk of a car. Some people still use cars, and that's fine. But I show this photo. This is an aluminum frame versus a cast iron frame. I mean, the options are almost endless. Now, this is actually a gas unit with a diaphragm pump, which is an expensive pump, but this pump pumps volume. Okay, these are volume pumps. Now, you'll notice this one's sitting on a pallet. They're going to deliver it to somebody. But anytime you get a rig and you put it in a vehicle, make sure it's anchored to the vehicle. Okay, we don't want to just sit it in there in case there's an accident. The rig can, the rig can spill, the rig moves around. That's not what we want. So make sure they are anchored to the vehicle when you put them in. So that's just some other things I want to do. But once again, choose what is the rig going, what's the rig doing? Okay, what's its function out in the field? Sometimes we even have folks that this is a pre-treat unit, a couple of 200-gallon tanks. It's used to do pre-treat, and they don't use it every day. So rather than put it in a vehicle, they decided to put it on a trailer. And that makes sense because you can trailer this to the account to do the job. And then this may sit for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and you're not tying up that truck all the time, with this setup. So there's a lot of flexibility. Think through, once again, how you want to do things. Actually, this one is a 200 and a 300-gallon tank, just so you know. Now, the last thing we'll talk about real quick, as far as rigs are concerned, is hose and hose reels. Well, these days you can get electric hose reels. Both of these on the left, both of those, and the one on the right, they are electric. Okay. You notice the orange hose, that's a 1-inch hose, a 3/4 or a 1-inch hose. Well, they're trying to move volume. And to do that, you need, that's moving volume through that hose. The blue hose is 1/2-inch hose, which that's fine for doing some termite work. Okay. But if you want to move volume, you want to use something like the orange hose so you can move that volume much easier. Now, if you've ever tried to pull 3/4 or 1-inch hose, it's heavy. Okay, so you're going to need something like an electric reel to use to pull it together, and so that's what it is. Now, notice the rig on the right. You've got the hose guide that's put into this unit, and then you'll notice the button there on the right hand side of that guide where you push the button and it's an electric reel and it reels up. The beauty of the hose guide is you can move the hose. It's always going to stay within that range and it's not going to rub on something. It actually rubs against those guides that's already put together. So that's a real nice way to do things. So once again, I'm just giving you options on how things set up as far as, putting your rig together. Now, let's start to put the things on the truck. All right, first thing we're going to talk about is PPE. And everybody knows when you get a product, or when you're putting PPE together on a truck, what products are you using on the truck as far as that goes? So, I just happen to use a TalStar label. It's something I've got. I can chop it up. I can show you pretty quickly. But in the precautionary section, there is this, hazards to humans, and that's what we need to have on here because this tells you what you've got to have. All right, such as, mixers, loaders, you got to have long sleeve shirt, long pants, socks, shoes, chemical resistant gloves. And then for doing application, you've got to have shirt, pants, socks, shoes, waterproof gloves. So chemical mixing gloves, waterproof gloves. Now, chemical mixing gloves, I think you all know what that is, but waterproof gloves are what I'm going to call the nitrile gloves or application gloves. So there's a difference. You also get recommendations on respirators. Look at the NIOSH approved respirator with any R, P, or HE, filter. Things of that nature. I'll take this moment and say, make sure that all of your respirators are kept in those bags, those Ziploc bags on your truck. I see people occasionally that just throw it up on the dash and things like that. You've got to remember those cartridges are just taking things out of the air. So by putting it in that bag, you limit the amount of exposure to those cartridges. It makes them last longer. Okay. And then you're going to have safety recommendations about how you should wash your, things and things like that. So understand and know okay, the PPE requirements on the labels, okay, that of the products that are on your truck. And you may have a couple of products on a truck, so you got to be conscious of anything, okay, as far as product wise that you use, what's on a truck. All right, safety equipment itself. So here's my little list. I hope it catches most things. If I don't, hey, let me know. I'll be happy to add it. Protective clothing, coveralls, rubber aprons, things of that nature. These days, coveralls, a lot of folks use Tyvek, which I call the throwaways. You can get a couple of uses out of them, then you can throw them away. Or if you still use cloth, make sure that we are laundering those on a regular basis, probably every few days to weekly. Okay. Then pants, shirt, shoes. I'm a firm believer to make sure that you put a little ditty bag or gym bag together and you keep a spare set, because you never know what's going to get splashed back on you or how much. And so you want to make sure that you've got that covered when you're out in the field. Gloves. We talked about mixing gloves. We talked about application gloves. We know mixing gloves are unlined rubber gloves. And that's really, we want to have that on the truck. And then our application gloves, which are the nitrile gloves. Make sure you got those on the truck also. Respirators, go back to your labels. What respirator cartridges, if you're using replaceables, need to be on there. You can use replaceables, or you can use what I call the disposable cartridges, or the disposable respirators. Make sure that you have the correct ones on the truck. Dust cartridges, okay, or dust masks. Dust masks don't replace chemical, okay? So, make sure, and we do drilling and things like that. So dust masks may be something we need on our truck. You need to have a hard hat. You need to have eye protection, whether it's goggles, face shields, safety glasses, whatever it may be. Make sure hearing protection on there, especially if we're doing drilling. First aid kits, things of that nature. That needs to be on there. How about a fire extinguisher? I've seen in the past on our trade magazine websites where somebody helped a motorist that had a fire situation because they had a fire extinguisher. Not only do we need to worry about it, okay, and if you use a gas engine, you need to have a fire extinguisher on there just in case. But these are things that think it through that we need to have. How about a road hazard kit? I don't want to wish anything on anybody, but if you break down, we need to make sure that we can, alert people so they stay away, or, so don't have any issues with being hit and things like that, not to mention spill kit. And then just a general, I like to keep a little 5-gallon bucket for trash that I generate while I'm out in the field. So these are things you need to keep up with. And these are, from a safety point of view, these are things that need to be on a truck. So remember that. I hope I've caught most everything. Hopefully I did. So let's jump into that treatment equipment that goes on this truck. Well, today we need to learn about, let's talk about termiticide application equipment. Okay. There used to be folks that made their own, and there is nothing wrong with that, because then you can make your specialized equipment. Well, over time, it just becomes easier to buy what I call prefabricated, because you might not have the resources to build your own. So these days, the folks at B&G, who make most everything, they've got things like the Robco 5-in-1 termite tool, which is a Robco valve, which is the number one on the right-hand side of the screen there. Then you get a cone jet attachment, which is number 2. It's the step-on for doing your slab work. You want to seal that hole while you're treatment. Then you want to, number 3 is that 40-inch, 7/16-inch soil rod with tips that goes to it, whether it's 360 or 180 or end release, okay? Then you've got the number 4 there, which is the soil rod, which is 5/8 inch thick, 40 inches. You're putting it in soil. We need a little sturdier, item to do that with. Tips with it, 360. I believe you can even get a 180 these days. Check with your distributor. And then number 5 is what I call the slab slash block rod, which is 17-inch uh, diameter, and then it's a 12-inch. So this pretty much can cover anything you want to do as far as that goes. So that cone jet attachment, which is number 2, you can put that on. You could do spray type applications if this truck did a number of different functions out in the field. But you need to make decisions on what tool you want, whether it's a Robco type setup, whether it's a Versatool type setup, which is what when I got into the business, this is what we used. Notice this also has that cone jet seal that goes on it if you're doing slab work and things like that. You've got 360 tips, you've got 180 tips, you've got end release. I call this the OT handle. This is, this is what, like I said, this is what I grew up with. Then, the sub slab injectors. Now, this is more specialized for sub slab injection of your product. You've got a couple of different sizes, the SSI 14, which is a 28-inch rod, and then the SSI 4, which is an 18-inch rod. So you can get what fits your what you use most often. Okay. But the beauty of the other units that I talked about, or the other treatment tools, they actually shut off in the handle. Sub slab injectors shut off at the tip. And so I would strongly suggest, if you're doing slab work, that you do this, because if you're using a tool that shuts off in the handle, you got to make sure that you wait until the liquid drains out of that, your shaft. Where these, they shut off at the tip. Much easier, much quicker, much cleaner. Because we don't want a lot of spills around where we're doing our application work. And then I can't harp enough about tips. 180 tips, where we can direct the material directly toward a foundation or a slab, or if it's a poured slab, things like that, or a 360, where we get spread of material 360 degrees around. Remember, these tips wear, and as these tips wear, you can be applying more than you think you are. So you need to do your you need to make sure that you check these tips. You need to make sure that you're using them, you're calibrating them correctly, so you know how much you're putting out. So put that in the memory banks. Always do this. I've seen some of these tips that are just round nosed and slick, and that means that they're worn highly. And if there's a 10% wear and you're putting 10% more out, and you put 200 gallons out, you're actually putting 220 gallons out. So, that's what I'm talking about. Let's make sure what we're doing out there. And then specialty tips are available all over the place out there. So make sure that you talk to a distributor or something. What do you want to do? What are we trying to get accomplished? There are specialty tips out there that can allow us to do treatment quite readily. And that's important when we're out there. So talk to a distributor on this. Talk to a manufacturer like B&G. There's a lot of options that are available out there. There's other equipment that we need to make sure it's on a truck. Things like trenching, digging tools, things of that nature, cleanup tools. The photos on the left there, that's they call it an all-pro hoe. Say that 3 times real fast. But anyway, this makes trenching, our labels, especially on termite, trench and rod, or trench and rod from the trench. Okay, so this is set up. It's about a 4-inch, something like that. You can do trenching quite easily. Comes in a number of different lengths, whether it's the 15-inch, which is the one on the where the block is there, the concrete block, that's a 15-inch or a 40-inch. It's according to how you want to do it. If you want the old hoe from the old days. But then also on the truck, you might want a garden rake, a shovel. You need to have cleanup equipment on there, whether it's a broom and a dustpan, whether it's a whisk broom and a dustpan. All of those things are needed. You need a flashlight source. If you're dealing in crawl space where maybe the power's off, something like that, then you need a light string. Used to in the old days, they'd buy plastic flashlights by the cases, and if you left one under a structure, it really wasn't a big problem. It was $2 or $3. Well, these days, you leave a $25 or a $30 and up flashlight, That's really going to get your attention. So these days we've got the LED flashlights, things like that. Get a lot more, get a lot more out of them. But you got to have a good light source on a truck. You've got to have electrical safety. If you've got power cords, we want to make sure that they're not frayed. They're in good shape. The photo on the left or the right there, excuse me, photo on the right, that's a ground fault interrupter. And then a photo on the left is a plug that is a ground fault interrupter. So anytime we can use those types of things, that's going to be to our advantage. We want to clean up. Well, these days, we used to have corded vacs on trucks. These days, you can go to, and there's a huge emphasis these days on these battery operated. I got this little Ryobi for Christmas, and this little thing is sweet. And you can put something like that. It's not real expensive on a truck, makes cleanup a lot easier, and that's what we need to think about. Well, we also need to think about drills and drilling, okay? And these days we've got drills. You can still use electric or gas drills, but the emphasis is moving toward battery operated drills, okay? This happens to be a couple of new ones, and they caught my eye early. Hilti, they're putting these, these new battery operated drills. That top one's a block. Second, the bottom photo of that Hilti drill could be a slab drill. The moral of the story is battery power is here, and it's only going to get better. It's gotten much better over the last few years, and it's only going to get better and better. Now, also, I want to say something about drill bits. If you're going to use drills, know what type of drill bits you need. That's always important when you're ordering them or you're talking to a distributor about them, whatever it may be. Know the types of drill bits. Some of the other items that you may want on, especially a termite truck, are moisture meters. What do we know about moisture and insects? Well, the higher the moisture content, the more attractive it is for insects to be in an area. And if you're putting together a termite or a wood destroying organisms truck, you need to have a moisture meter on there. These days, you've got the pinned ones, like the little green one there, or the non-intrusives. Now, the non-intrusives are fairly costly. They're $350 and up, okay? But those pin types, those are $50 and down these days. You would only want to use that on unfinished areas where you could put it directly into the wood, timbers, things of that nature. But the moral of the story, we need to understand. We need to have the ability to read moisture. These days, you've got borescopes. The pricing has just fallen. You can get one for $200 or less now. You can get them that now. You can use your cell phone as the screen for them. So think about things like that. And while I was looking up some of the other things, pops up thermal detection. These days, for a couple of $100, you can get thermal detection that goes on your phone. So, and these things are only going to get less expensive as we go along. So, all of these things are things you want to have on a termite truck. One of the specialty items is foam. Foam gives you a lot of ability to treat areas because you can build it up these days. Well, you've got foam used to we had to have foamers, that we put on truck. Well, these days we've got foam in a can. And now we've got these dry products that can be used, these flowable products. So you got a lot of options if you're setting up that termite truck on how you want to go about, setting it up, products you want on it, things of that matter. And, that kind of wraps up the termite side. So let's jump into the pest side here. How do you set that pest truck up? Well, here we've got, and this is one of the Cook's trucks. Notice this is a side view of a cap. The whole side of the cap rolls up. You've got the hose coming off the side, the passenger side, which is the side we would want toward the account. Okay. And then you've got a bin system and things like that that's set up in there, and bins and racking. Okay. That's kind of where it's at. They're set up where they've got bins on both sides of this cap, so they can keep like baits and things of that nature on one side of the truck, and they can keep their liquid and dilutables on the other side of the truck, which just separates it, makes it easier to store, easier to think about where do I need to go, where do I need to pick it up, things like that. There's the other side where the dilutables and things of that nature are. So it's just you can set these things up And notice how these are bent. Each thing has a bend where it goes. So that just makes things really nice, really easy to use as far as that goes, and practical for a technician. They got a they got a lot of feedback at Cooks how to set these trucks up. So that's something that you want to think about. And then all of this makes for a really nice setup in the truck. Once again, notice those nitrile gloves. They're on the end of that rack. So if you're at the side of the truck and it's open, it's very easy to get to, things of that nature. They carry a couple of backpack sprayers on this particular truck. Well, actually, this truck is a demo truck. So you'd probably only have one. But, the moral of the story is you set these up, you can make them as useful as possible. Okay. And that's really something that we need to think about when we're setting up trucks. They've even got a center portion in this where they put a ladder. Unfortunately, hopefully, well, you might have seen it in one of the back photos, but this is, you can put, that in that tool tainer is their hand sprayer, so to speak. You see a duster there, things like that. So everything has a place. Everything has a way to lock it down or to secure it. And that's the important part when you're putting a truck together. Now, as far as liquid application goes these days, we've still got what I call industry standard 1 gallon units, whether it's a B&G or the new Aerofog units, things of that nature. I've started to see quite a little movement toward what I call the more pinpoint application units, these little quart or pint sprayers that are on the far right, far left. One of them's an Aerofog, one of them's a B&G, an AccuSprayer. You can actually get a holster for these. You can carry it on your hip. And when you think about it, unless this is a big, huge account, we don't need, we're making pinpoint applications when we're inside. So we usually don't need a 1 gallon. And, dragging around at least 9 to 12 pounds in a sprayer is not what you want to do when you can go lightweight. Then the Neogen, this little trigger spray unit, that's like a pint or a quart that, once again, it's a belt system. You can put it on your hip, but then you can meter in, and you've got a number of different settings on this. So it's about doing pinpoint application, and you can do much more of this with some of these newer, smaller applicators. So you might want to think about how you want to stock the truck, how you want to go about it. You've also got backpacks to think about, things like that. The move these days is from the manual pump up backpacks, which are on the right, okay, to the new battery powered, something like this Flow Zone on the left. I've got to tell you, I've had one of these battery backpacks, one of the Flow Zones, for a couple of years. And I find it really handy when I'm doing demo work out in the field. Now, something I will say right here, and I apologize, I don't have a photo in here. You can actually get a pressure regulator that goes in line on your manual backpacks. Birchmeier makes it. Okay, now they're not cheap. I'm not going to fib to you about that. But what it does is it really reduces the amount of pumping that you have to do on a manual backpack. So, it holds pressure. You dial it in to say 20 psi or 15 psi, whatever you want to go out at. And that's, how you want to go about it. I'll also say at this point, tips for these is hugely important. The amount of product you use in a lot of cases is determined by the tips and the tip sizes. And you have a number of tips that are available for whether it's a manual or a backpack, a battery backpack. And that will help you in your application. And that's important to think about. These days, we've got backpack blowers, and these backpack blowers are going from gas, like you see in that Steel 200 up there, to battery power. Makita's got a new one. Flowzone's coming in, has had one out for the past year. And the Birchmeier, which is the one on the left, this particular one, now it's not inexpensive. I don't want you to think that it's a cheap one. It is not. but the flexibility that that type of unit gives you is just huge. You can dial in your application, you know, and the type of application, and you're going to be able to do that with all of these. Okay, but the moral of the story is, you know, like I said, battery is really taking over, and that's where we want to be, or that's where you need to see things. Uh, you know, if you don't, how I'm sure if well, let me back up. Everybody should have one of these on your truck. Okay, if you don't, you're missing a great opportunity. This piece of equipment is dual in its purpose. It's a great PR tool, but it also, by knocking down cobwebs and things like that, it just makes your job easier long term. And that's what it's about. You can get designer colors for these now, you know, blues, reds, yellows, you name it. But the moral of the story is this is a huge piece of equipment on a truck. And when you set that truck up, you want to make sure that you've got a space for it on your truck. Notice upper left hand of this photo. Look where that Duster, that Webster has a place, and that's the important thing. All right. So other things to think about that's on a truck. You know, these days we exclusion should be part of the service. Shouldn't be something you think, you know, you shouldn't think much farther than, you know, small area. If I seal up, we're not going to have any more issues. And that's where we need to be with this. So let's, you know, keep that in mind. And by the way, when we apply caulk, that's application. Because a lot of times people think, oh, I have to do chemical application, but we can do exclusion application. And that's huge to think about. Some of the other odds and ends you may need on a truck. How about this Actisol? That's a deep harborage unit. Okay. Now that deep harborage unit is great for commercial counts because that's using air and small particle size to push in deep in harborage areas. So if you do commercial work, you may want to think about something like this on a truck. That little Sure Kill, that's a new bait applicator that the folks at Neogen and Sure Kill have out. I really like it. You know, it gets us away from a gun type, which we could have some issue with in some areas. But the moral of the story is I really like that. There's a couple of dial-in settings on it for application. Pick your duster. What do you want? A big quart duster? Do you want a small mini duster? Do you want a hand duster? What do you want on the truck? This is where you've got to talk with your technician and supply them accordingly. How do granule spreader? Do you use granules on the truck? You know, you've got the sling spreader like the Birchmeier. You got the Whirlybird, which I see a ton of people use. Also, I sell Talstar PL. Well, Talstar PL will grind one of these Whirlybirds up because it's a silica sand type based material. So you got to understand what granules fit with what spreaders. So I'll kind of leave it there. And then one of the final slides that I've got here is, we talked about tips and tipping. You can find the tips to make your applications more efficient. You just have to ask your distributors about it. I don't care which gun you use, or anything like that. Make sure you got that. And then the final thing I'll say is, invest in a small toolkit, keep it on the truck. This is something from Harbor Freight that you can get for like $30. It's got wrenches, it's got pliers, it's got open-end wrenches, it's so hammer. It just gives you a lot of things. You don't have a lot of money invested because I guarantee you somebody will leave one of these pieces somewhere. But the moral of the story is you got to give them the tools to fix things when they're out in the field because they will break down. One of the last slides I've got here is application and mixing. That information should be on the trucks, whether it's on the termite truck or the general pest. That's a Scion rate card, so that's a good type thing to put on your trucks, or make sure it's in the cab so your technicians can refer back and make sure they're putting out mixing correctly. These days, I've got a couple of companies that have worked with software folks that actually have an app that goes on their phones for how to mix everything that's on the truck. And then there's services such as Labels and SDS, which is a service that you can take, and that they actually can customize their app to make sure that its information is available to your technicians when they're out in the field. So a lot of things that are available out there. So the last thing I'll leave you with, I don't care if you're using a hand sprayer. I don't care if you're using a backpack sprayer. I don't care if you're using a power sprayer. Be efficient in your application and thorough in your application, and that's where you stop troubles. Okay, so I'll leave you, that one. All right, let's wrap this up. How would I outfit a truck? Well, it's easy for me to spend your money, but he who dies with the most toys wins. And this is about toys on your truck. Okay, I think about equipment as toys, and that's usually important. So, you know, stock the trucks how they need to be stocked by talking with your and conversing with your technicians. Make sure they've got the proper tools to do the job right. Well, I hope that we got maybe some questions. If we do, I'll be online here to take them. I do want you to remember this, though. We get so involved and so busy. Pesticide application is not our service. It may be part of the service, but is not the service. Okay. Knowledge is the service. How do we solve your problem? And that's what we need to communicate to our customers. And if we do that, then, we're going to be, that's what we need to communicate. We do IPM every day. We just don't talk about it enough. And that's the knowledge to correct the problem. And that is your service. So remember to do that. So with that, there's my contact information. You may want to write it, jot it down. If not, that's how you can get a hold of me. That's my cell phone. So you can text that number and things like that. If there's anything I can help you with from an FMC product standpoint, please reach out to me. That's why we're out here and in the field. So with that, thank you all very much for your attention. We really appreciate it. And I'll stop here.